Right now, you're holding the most brilliant, structurally sound corporate strategy your company has ever seen. You have run the data, you have mapped the market, and you have built the ultimate operational blueprint. But when you walk into the boardroom to pitch it, you open with a weak joke. You flood the screen with a dense, text heavy slides. You rush through your core thesis, and you end by quietly saying, "Thank you." And just like that, your brilliant idea is dead on arrival. Before I break down the exact uncompromising 15-step mathematical framework to completely dominate any boardroom, lecture, or a high stake pitch, hit the subscribe button and press the notification bell. I post daily videos showing you exactly how to navigate the global labor market using cold, hard engineering logic. You do not want to miss this blueprint. In 2019, an MIT professor named Patrick Winston delivered a legendary 1-hour lecture called How to Speak. It has tens of millions of views because it is not a generic public speaking seminar. It is a systematic cognitive teardown of how human brain process information. Today, we are translating that academic masterpiece into corporate weaponry for the 2026 executive. I'm going to show you why your ideas are absolutely worthless if you cannot speak them, why you must cycle your data, how to build an intellectual fence around your strategy, and why saying thank you at the end of the presentation is an act of professional self-sabotage. Grab a notebook. It is time to stop hoping people will listen and start architecturing a scenario where they have no choice. Welcome back. I'm Dr. HR. To understand why my approach to the executive communication is aggressively different from the generic advice you get from the corporate HR departments, you must understand my underlying architecture. I hold a PhD in human resources, a master's from prestigious Tata Institute of Social Sciences TISS in Mumbai, and a bachelor's in computer engineering. I do not look at public speaking as an art. I look at it as a systems engineering problem. You are attempting to transfer a high-density data payload from your neural network into the neural networks of a highly distracted, cynical audience. Patrick Winston Foundation rule is brutal, but it is the absolute truth of the global labor market. Your success is determined by your ability to write and the quality of your idea in that exact order. You can have the greatest mind in Dubai, but if you cannot articulate your architecture, you will spend your entire career executing the mediocre ideas of a highly charismatic inferior. Let us break down the Winston's cognitive framework and deploy it into the modern executive boardroom. The empowerment promise. You do not start with a joke. You start with an empowerment promise. You look the board in the eye and you tell them exactly what structural leverage they are going to acquire by the end of your session. Do not say, "A funny thing happened on my way to the DIFC this morning." Say, "In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to give you the exact algorithmic pipeline to reduce our supply chain latency by 14%, recovering $2.2 million in stranded capital." You hook them with power, not humor. Cycling the subject. The 20% fog rule. Once you start speaking, you must account for the reality of the human attention. At any given moment in a corporate presentation, 20% of your audience is fogged out. They are thinking about a text message, their children, or their next meeting. If you state your most critical metric only once, the 20% who were fogged out will miss it entirely. And they will spend the rest of the meeting trying to piece together a broken puzzle. To ensure the probability of comprehension is absolute, you must cycle the subject. You must take your core idea and state it 3 times throughout the using different angles. 2. You state it in the middle as a mathematical proof. 3. You state it at the end as the operational mandate. You build redundancy into your communication architecture so the data payload survives the distraction. Phase 2. Building the fence and weaponizing silence. If you present a new AI initiative to the C-suite, their brain will immediately try to categorize it alongside something they already know. They will say, "Oh, this is just like the software patch we did in 2023. If you allow them to make that connection, your idea loses its unique value. You must execute what Winston calls building a fence. In explaining your strategy, you must explicitly draw boundaries around it so it cannot be confused with the status quo. The execution. Our proposed deployment for the talentbridge.ai might seem similar to the legacy Oracle integration we executed last year. However, Oracle optimized for historical reporting, whereas this architecture optimizes for predictive real-time token density. And you aggressively tell them what your idea is not. You fence it in. The 7-second rule, weaponizing silence. In a boardroom, silence is the ultimate display of dominance. When you ask the board a question, most mid-level managers panic if no one answers within 2 seconds. They jump in, answer their own question, and shatter the tension. Winston teaches us that you can and must wait 7 full seconds for an answer. 7 seconds of a dead air in a corporate meeting feels like a physical wait. It is an eternity, but it is the exact amount of time required for an executive to process the question, formulate a response, and feel the social pressure to engage. When you ask a high-stake question, if we do not pivot our data architecture today, what is our calculated market share loss by Q3? You stop talking. You lock the eye with the PLN leader. You count to 7 in your head. You force the room to carry the cognitive load. Phase 3. Spatial architecture and the language bottleneck. You cannot control the mind of the audience if you do not control the physical environment. Winston said, case the place like you are robbing a bank. If you are pitching a multi-million-dollar integration, you do not walk into a boardroom for the first time at the moment of the meeting. You go there the day before. You check the HDMI cable. You stand where you will stand. You test the light. Whenever the lights go down, it signals to human biology that we should go to the sleep. You demand a well-lit room. You eliminate all environmental friction before the game even begins. The single language processor. Now we must address the most catastrophic mistake made in a corporate presentation. The text-heavy PowerPoint slide. The human brain possesses only one language processor. We must either use it to read the text or we can use it to listen to a speaker. We cannot do both simultaneously. If you put a slide on the screen that contains 40 words, the audience will instantly start reading it. While they are reading, they are completely deaf to your voice. You are competing against your own visual aid, and the visual aid always wins. There are always too many words. Winston established a rigid rule. Blackboards are for informing. Slides are for exposing. If you are explaining a complex algorithm or a step-by-step supply chain pivot, do not use a slide. Walk to the whiteboard. The physical act of drawing the system forces the audience to mirror your cognitive space. The speed with which you write on the board is exactly the speed at which the human brain can absorb the idea. Slides should only be used to expose things that cannot be drawn. A high-resolution graph, a photograph of a prototype, or a single stark mathematical metric. Phase 4. The 5-minute proof and the Winston star. If you are interviewing for an elite executive role or pitching the board for funding, you do not have an hour to prove your worth. You have exactly 5 minutes. In the first 5 minutes, you must accomplish 2 binary tasks. You must show vision. You must prove you see the macro trajectory of the industry. 2. You must show you have done something. You must prove you can execute the micro details. If you only show execution, you are a technician. The apex operator established both within 300 seconds. The Winston star. How to be remembered. Once you have proven your competence, you must ensure your idea survives the decay of the human memory. If you want a boardroom to remember your strategy, 48 hours after you leave the room, you must build the Winston star. This is a 5-point mnemonics architecture. 1. Symbol. You need a visual icon associated with your work, not a corporate logo, but a visual metaphor. Example, a cracked foundation to represent the legacy HR system. 2. The slogan. You need a high-impact, repeatable phrase that provides a cognitive handle. Example, we are stopping the spreadsheet amputation. 3. Surprise. You must present a piece of data that violently disrupts their assumption. Example, our highest performers are actually costing us $2 million in invisible latency. 4. The salient idea. The single uncompromising thesis that they must not forget. 5. The story. You must anchor the data in a narrative. Humans do not remember spreadsheet. They remember stories of the survival, failure, and triumph. When you embed these 5 elements into your presentation, your strategy becomes neurologically sticky. it becomes impossible to unhear. Phase 5, the weak move. Never say thank you. We arrive at the final, the most uncompromising rule of the Winston protocol. You have delivered a flawless presentation. You have cycled the data, you have weaponized the silence, you have delivered the Winston star. And then the final slide appears. It says Q&A and you lower your shoulder, smile weakly and say thank you for your time. You have just destroyed your own status. In the psychology of the power dynamic, saying thank you at the end of the lecture or a pitch suggests that the audience stayed out of politeness. It implies you are grateful they endured your presence and that they have a profound desire to be somewhere else. It is a submissive maneuver. You are an expert. You have just transferred massive wealth-generating intellectual capital into their mind. They should be thanking you. How to close? To close, you will not go to the hell if you say thank you. But in the corporate arena, it is a weak move. Instead, you close with a structural command. Use end on a salient idea, the execution. The data is clear, the legacy systems are collapsing, we have the architecture to transition the infrastructure by Q3. The only variable remaining is your authorization to execute. We begin phase 1 on Monday. Then you stop talking. You hold the room. If they burst into a wild applause, or if the CEO nods in absolute agreement, you can mouth a quiet thank you in response to their validation. But the very last word out of your mouth must never be an apology for taking their time. Look closely at the mechanics of the market. You can spend 10 years mastering the complex engineering frameworks on Earth. You can build the ultimate AI startup at Namaste.ai or Alumnex Lab. You can hold the mathematical solution to your company's deepest crisis. But if your language processor bottlenecks their attention, if your jokes lower your status, and if your slides put them to sleep, your idea will die in the dark. Speaking is not a soft skill. It is the ultimate delivery mechanism for your intellectual capital. Knowledge and practice matters infinitely more than the natural talent. Case the place. Build the fence around your thesis. Cut your slides in half. Demand the whiteboard. And never ever surrender your status as the finish line. Process the data, execute the strategy, and I'll see you at the top.